All right. Hey guys, what's up? So today we're going to again resume doing Try Hack Me Complete Beginner Path. Yesterday, in the last stream, we basically covered the Complete Beginner Introduction module. Today, we thought in this stream we would cover Linux Fundamentals module. We will begin from there. Depending on the kind of time we have or how much time it is taking, then we'll basically decide on how far we'll go. So yeah, I guess let's just dive right into it. Again, this stream's VOD is uploaded on YouTube as well. I'm working on getting the clips ready to segment the videos into individual bits so that people can look up exactly what they want. I'm also planning to make a few shorts for each single question that we're solving. And yeah, if possible, I'll also try and add subtitles to everything because I understand my voice might not be clear a little. So, or I might be going too fast or too slow or whatnot. On Twitch, also, I've highlighted each and every single module or each and every single room's specific segment of the stream. I've made them into highlights. I have uploaded them on Twitch as well. So if you want to go to a specific room or see the walkthrough for a specific room, you can just click on the highlight. It should be available the first section on my channel page. So let's dive right into it. Okay. And yesterday, just for reference, we finished the complete beginner introduction. We finished the tutorial starting out in cybersec, and we finished introductory researching. Um, so today the plan was we would do Linux fundamentals. Now, Linux fundamentals is something I have not done earlier as well. I've done a lot of the rooms earlier, a long time ago, but Linux fundamentals has been newly added to this path. So yeah, let's learn together. Thereafter, we'll see how far we can get. Maybe we can finish this today itself, or maybe we'll have to do it in the next stream. So yeah, and if you're watching this, be it on YouTube or anything, please drop a like, drop a comment. If you want, if you have any specific doubts or anything, you can drop a comment, or you can always join me on Twitch. The link to it is also on the YouTube channel, and on if you're watching on Twitch, the link to the my YouTube channel is also there on the channel page. So all in all, if you have any doubts or if you want to join me live or if you want to engage with what I'm doing, if you want to maybe correct me in parts, all in all you can do anything, just come by, we're going to have a swell time. And yeah, so let's dive right into it. We are going to be doing the Linux fundamentals path. Let's start with part 1. um Again, TryHack Me premium subscribers, they get a inbuilt attack box, basically an inbuilt virtual Linux machine. So you don't have to worry about setting up your environment and whatnot. I am a premium subscriber myself, so I'll be showing everything that I'm doing in here itself, in the browser itself. So if you have your own Linux machine, you can also probably go through these steps, and you can also probably take a free subscription to Try Hack Me. It is really worth the try. It's really worth your time. Okay, let's start. So, just an overview of this room. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 tasks. We'll try not to spend too much time on each task. Let's not get sidelined with discussions. So, yes. Obviously, this room is meant for people who are starting from ground up for Linux, who don't have exactly a specific background in Linux. I will also be trying to narrate and make it easy to understand a few concepts, but I personally have a lot of experience in Linux. So if I'm skipping over something, you can always ask me in the comments, or you can always drop a comment on my chat and I'll be able to help you. So, yes. Like, again, Linux is a family of operating systems. It is, when someone says Linux, they don't mean Linux OS, they mean some distribution of Linux. Now basically, just like how Windows and Mac machines are different, they have different visual designs, they have different applications, they have different ways to run them. Linux is also completely different. But the thing is, Windows and Mac OS are basically proprietary. Windows is obviously made by Microsoft, and Mac OS is obviously made by Apple. But Linux is community maintained. It is made by the people and for the people. There are multiple distributions. You can find something that fits exactly what you want. If you're doing a server instance, you can probably download a server based distribution like Red Hat. If you're doing cybersecurity, you can download a distribution that has all the cybersecurity tools in it, like Kali Linux or Parrot OS. If you're doing, let's say, like video editing or media, you can download something that supports a lot of these codec files and like the encodings and whatnot, like Ubuntu, and then there is Linux Mint and whatnot. There are multiple desktop environments as well. You can have it look more like Windows. There are a few environments called GNOME, which make it look more like Windows. If you're someone who's a fan of like the Windows XP or the Windows 2000 layout, then you can download an XFCE desktop environment. So yeah, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of customizability. But the problem is sometimes people who are moving to Linux, there is a, like, the problem with too much choice. You don't know which exactly is the right one or if you're going for the best one. uh, all in all, it depends on your purpose. There's a lot of community help online. There's a lot of different things online, and I think in this module we'll be seeing like fundamental, like, let's say, commands and some essential like ways to interact with the file system, and how users work in Linux and how groups work in Linux, and what this means for us as someone who's learning cybersecurity. So that is the idea. We're going to go through the basics, and this is more or less applicable for all Linux distributions. So yes, and we are done with introduction. Now let's Okay, now we're going to dive into a little bit of a background on Linux. I just covered a little bit of like what are distributions, what are the choices you have, whatnot. Now basically, Linux, it is not exactly very rookie friendly. If you're someone who's not comfortable around computers, or if you're not someone who's like very versatile with like using digital tech, then Linux is probably not a good first choice for you. If you have experience like using computers, even if it's for casual use, if you know how Windows works, if you know how like different things work, how you store files, whatnot, then maybe Linux is a good like OS for you to jump ship into. Linux is very lightweight compared to Windows. The thing is, Windows installation by default takes up around 20 to 25 GB, and this is without like setting up OneDrive or setting up backups or setting up different things that Windows offers. And Mac OS is also something, it eats in around 5, 6, 7 GB. Linux distributions, they come in as lightweight as 120 MB. Like with 120 MB, you can get a complete system up and running on which you can do anything. You can connect to the internet, you can do so many things, you can store files, whatnot. So this is very lightweight, and also because it is lightweight, it is very fast. uh, Linux is actually very very commonly used. It's so commonly used. It's not commonly used in consumer, like like the average user's computers a lot, but almost every server that you go to, like, or every website that you visit, or let's say every like entertainment related kiosks that you use, like when you're outside near a mall or something, whenever you're going to check out, or whenever you're going to like self checkout, or like automated barcode scanning, whatnot, at like grocery marts, and like traffic lights or industrial sensors or whatnot, almost everything runs on Linux. Some or the other distribution, or we can call it a flavor of Linux. Now the thing is, Linux isn't exactly like like I was saying, it isn't exactly a single OS. It is actually an umbrella term, basically meaning that it classifies a group of OSs. And the classification is based on the criteria that they are running on Unix. Now, Unix is the core OS on which all of these distributions are built, and Unix is open source, meaning that everybody has the code for it. Everybody can freely see what exactly they're getting in Unix. In Windows, you can't. In Windows, you go to like you try and open Windows, your Windows installation file, and see how many files there are. You don't know what each file is doing, or even if you want to understand, it'll take a long time. With Unix, it is open source. You can see every single piece of code that goes into building the OS. And yeah, like I was saying, there are multiple variants. They come in all shapes, sizes, and applications, so you can basically tailor it to exactly what you need. Now, the most common ones, obviously, a lot of people would hear this: Ubuntu. Now, Ubuntu is like the most Windows looking Linux OS there is. It is very useful and it works and behaves a lot like Windows. So it is very useful for people to move into Linux. Now, Ubuntu itself is based on an OS called Debian. So Debian OS, it itself is a very user-friendly OS, but it is very versatile. In that it is very flexible and it can get very technical. So Ubuntu is built on top of it to make complete user simplification. So Debian in itself is probably the biggest like family of OSs inside Linux, because it is so extensible and it is so flexible. Uh, it can like configure itself. For example, even if you take Ubuntu, which is supposed to be consumer friendly, you can even run it as a server. You even use it as a fully fledged desktop. You can even run it on something as small as 512 MB of RAM. Now, 512 MB of RAM on an average is found in computers from 2003 2002, and in that you can get full desktop environments, full server environments. So yeah, this is very useful, especially Ubuntu, Debian, or any flavor of Linux, if you choose the right one. In this though, we're going to be using Ubuntu. You can also use Kali Linux, because Kali Linux itself is also based on Debian. So in Ubuntu or in Kali Linux or in Debian, in all three of them, the commands are the same. They're all based on the same package managers, because they're all based on Debian. They're all based on the same package managers. They're all based on the same like architecture, core architecture. So yeah, more or less, it is always the same. Mm, Now, this is a research question. Yesterday, we saw how important it is to research. So, our question is: what year was the first release of a Linux operating system? Now, we will go to Google. Yep. Now, a little bit of backstory. Linux, the credit for developing the first OS of Linux is given to Linus Torvalds. So, Linux itself is named after him: Linus. So, again, here in this knowledge panel, we can see it was released in 1994. So, let's see if we got that right. Nope, that is not correct. So, we will now go into a Wikipedia article. There's a lot of backstory here, a lot of people and whatnot. Yep. In 1991, while studying computer science at University of Helsinki, Linus Torvalds began a project that later became the Linux kernel. So yes, 1991 is what we're looking for. Let's check. Yep. And there we go. So yeah, I mean, at least we also see that sometimes these knowledge panels can be really deceptive, because a lot of people are looking for the first released OS, but we were looking for the first developed OS. So yeah, and let's move to the next task. Uh, Now again, in TryHackMe, we can deploy task-specific machines, and we can do it by connecting to it or by using a remote machine as well. So yeah, now this whole description is a little bit about what exactly is the machine and whatnot. Mm, so for the time being, let's start the machine, and yeah, it got deployed. We will let the machine get started. So the machine itself in the background gets ready in about 50 seconds, and the machine itself in which we are interacting, which it'll be ready in about 100 seconds. So let's give it that time. And okay, so let's get back into it. We can see our machine has been deployed, both the task machine and the Ubuntu attack box that we're going to be using. So basically, when we press start machine, it automatically linked this task machine and our front end, the attack front end together. Normally, we would have to do it on our own by copying the IP address, but here they've done it for us. So yeah, basically using this front, the front on the right, this interface on the right, we'll be able to pass commands to the task machine and we'll be able to complete our tasks. So that is the idea. So this right here is where we're going to be passing commands. And our task was to deploy the first Linux machine. We've done it. So let's press complete. All right, moving on to task 4. We're going to be running our first few commands. Now, the thing is with Linux OSs, a lot of things are done in the command line. Now, for someone who's who's just taking a look at Linux, or someone who's just taking a look at command line, it can be very daunting. It can be very intimidating, but it's very easy, almost like, you're learning a language. Once you get the basic words right, you can automatically piece together the basic words to form, like, exactly what you're looking for. You can ask stuff, you can do stuff and whatnot. The same thing with like any computer language for that matter, or any code for that matter. If you can form the basic words, if you understand the basic syntax of how things work, you can automatically start writing commands. You can automatically start getting the system to perform exactly what you need it to do. So that is basically what we're going to be doing. We're going to be seeing the first few basic building block commands to get done with exactly what we need. Especially we're looking at these two commands first. First command is called echo. Now, normally in English, echo means, like, when you say something, you hear your voice back, you hear a reverb of the voice back. Same thing. Now, if you say something by saying echo so and so, like we can see in this screenshot here, if we say something like echo hello friend, right there, it will echo that back to us. It will reverb that back to us. We can hear it again. So yeah, it will output any text or any input that we provide to it. Now, the second command we're going to be learning is who am I? Who am I? Exactly. It's like just exactly like English. You're asking it the question. Who am I? So in terms of like normal, when you're speaking and you ask somebody who am I, they'll tell you your name or they'll tell you who you are. But in terms of the PC, if we want to find out who we are, we are essentially finding out which account we're logged in as, or which person we are logged in as. So if you type in who am I, you can see exactly who you're logged in as and what your rights are. So yeah, based on that knowledge, let's try to answer the first few questions. The first question being, if we wanted to output the text try hack me, what would our command be? Now, right here, we can see echo hello friend. Echo and whatever is there in between inverted commas is getting echoed out to us. It's getting outputted out to us. So, if we had to output this text, what would our command be? Now, let's try to do that here. Let's type in echo. We wanted to output try hack me. And if you press enter, there we go. Try hack me right there. So, this is the correct command. We wanted to output this text. So, we will just input it here. Echo try hack me. There you go. But our answer is incorrect. Now, why? Why? Because we'll have to take a look at the hint. So, we have to remove the quotation marks. Now, what we saw in here, like, with the echo and whatever, if we were to echo it without the quotation marks, it would still come out the same. The reason we put in quotation marks is because if there's like some inputs where like there's like special characters, for example, you see this exclamatory mark, or if there are some like dollar symbols or whatnot, these things are recognized as system syntax. We will come across this later, but for the time being, you just have to understand that if there are special characters, you're better off putting inverted commas around your text if there are spaces or special characters. So let's go ahead and remove the inverted commas because this is just text. Try hack me. And there we go. Correct answer. Now, the next question being, what is the username of who you're logged in as on your deployed Linux machine? So, there is actually a quick, like, hacky way of knowing this as well. You see, blank at the rate blank. This is the syntax for showing what exactly is the terminal running on. So, it is running on, the syntax is normally like this. It is running on this user. So user at the rate blank. Now this blank is a system's name. Now system name might seem very redundant at start, but actually when you have a fleet of systems or when you have a network where there are multiple systems connected, each system having its own name can save you a lot of time. So at the start, if you see this, like before the dollar symbol, this whole thing, this is user at the rate computer name. This way you can immediately tell. So here clearly our user is tryhackme, but just to make sure, we'll also type in the whoami command and check. Look, when we type in whoami, it says tryhackme. So we got it. Let's type in tryhackme, and there we go. Now, yeah, that is pretty much it. These are our first few commands. We're getting there. Now let's move on to task 5. We are now interacting with the file system. Now, if you think about it, echo in itself, when you're saying it something and it's returning back, it seems pretty useless. Now, in like more complex applications where you have to output different stuff, there it is useful. But right now, our learning of echo and who am I seems pretty useless. The thing is, with echo, when you write it in programs, let's say if you're running a script and if you want to, like, let's say you're running a script to add two numbers, you can accept two numbers and you can echo out the output. So there are different ways you can do this. You can get the terminal to run different scripts, and also at the same time thinking about who am I, why is it exactly useful when we can see our username here. In a lot of terminals that we will be either hacking into or we will be taking control of, this interface at the start, blank at blank, is not visible. Only the dollar symbol is visible. This is more of a security measure, and the who am I, these things are also disabled sometimes, but more or less always who am I is available in most cases. So immediately being able to find out which user we are logged in as will allow us to, like, judge properly exactly what rights we have on the system, what exactly can we do. If you're root, if you're logged in as root or admin, you can pretty much do anything. But if you're logged in as some user with like only entry level rights, like only reading files or only writing files, then it's pretty useless. Then we'll have to find ways to, like, gain more access, gain elevated access. So yeah, that is called privilege escalation. This is something we saw yesterday when we were looking up at a few CVEs. We're trying to escalate the privileges, we're trying to escalate the rights we have. And who am I is a good way to check exactly who we're logged in as. Now let's also learn a few more commands. Now we'll try to interact with the file system. Basically, file system is where, like, all of the files are stored, like how are they organized, how exactly can you open them, what programs can you use to open them. Now in Windows, for example, there are multiple media files, and at the same time all the Windows directories have different places like users, documents, downloads, whatnot. So for you to be able to like traverse through them in like a Windows or a Mac OS, you can just click. You can like click on the environment and it will move. But in Linux, especially when you're stuck with only a command line, then moving around is a very important skill to have. So with relation to that, moving around and opening and whatnot, we are first going to be learning how to know exactly which directory or where in the system are we right now, so that we can move around. So if we wanted to know that, the first command we would know is pwd, which is print working directory. It prints the directory in which this terminal is currently reading. So if we typed in pwd, yep, we are in the home directory, and inside the home directory we are in a subfolder called tryhackme. Now this tryhackme is assigned for the user tryhackme. Now if we wanted to find out exactly what all are there in this directory, we would ask it to list everything. the short command, the command is ls. It basically lists everything that is there in the current directory we are in, basically in home try hack me. So if you press that, yep, there are there is a file called access.log, and there are a few blue highlighted files: folder 1, folder 2, folder 3, folder 4. Now clearly, as the name suggests, they are folders. You can go into them. Normally names without any extensions are usually called folders. I mean, like, they have other contents inside of them that you can access. Now the thing is, um, in Linux, you don't necessarily refer to folders as folders. You refer to them as directories. And if you're referring to them inside of another folder, you call it a subdirectory. So basically, to put it in perspective, home is a directory. TryHackMe is also a directory, but TryHackMe is a subdirectory of home. That is why we put forward slash and say that it is inside that. And this folder 1, 2, 3, and 4 are subdirectories of TryHackMe. Like that. So you get it. Um, so yeah, this is ls. Now let's say we wanted to change directory. Let's say we want to go inside folder 1. Basically, what we will do is we will ask it to cd, change directory. Now, when you press cd, you press space and then you specify the address you want to go to. In this case, you want to go to folder 1. Nice. And if you press that, you can see tilde slash folder 1. Tilde being where our terminal initially spawned, which was in home try hack me. And inside that slash, we are in folder 1. Now, if we want to see what is there in folder 1, we press ls. If nothing is written, that means there is nothing inside the folder. Now, let's say we want to back out of it. We want to go back into the home directory, the tryhackme directory. We just press change directory dot dot. Dot dot means go one up or go behind, go to the upper level by one step. So the upper level of folder 1 by one step is the one behind the slash, which is tilde, which is nothing but home try hack me. We're going back to home. Now if you press enter, you can see that it is gone. Now if you press ls to prove that we're back in the home directory, there we go. So this is basically how you go about doing it. um and then at the same time we can also like continue to do different things and whatnot. um the next thing we are actually going to learn is concatenate, or the cat command. But we will come back to this. I want to just go over the examples that they've given as well. So again, like we see here, when you press ls, short for listing, you can see there are multiple different things inside that directory. Now again, take a look here. Ubuntu is the name of the user, and IP 10.10.152.168 is the name of the computer. So yeah, keep that format in mind. User at the rate computer name, and so on. Tilde is basically where the terminal has started. So putting a slash something something is basically saying you're inside of another directory, subdirectory. Now clearly we can see when this guy types ls, there are 4 directories inside: important files, my documents, notes, pictures, whatnot. Now if you wanted to directly like find out what is there inside, let's say pictures, you don't have to go inside pictures. You don't have to type in cd pictures and then go in and then type ls. You can just type in ls pictures. It will automatically list you all the contents there are in the pictures directory. Now if you wanted to change our directory, again we use cd command. We would want to go to somewhere else. Again, after the tilde by slash, it is represented if you're going into a subdirectory. If we wanted to output the contents of a file, now cat, again short for concatenate, it is basically going to like gather or basically combine all of the inputs there inside a file into one string, and it will just print out everything into the terminal itself. Now I think let's take a look here. Yep. So this person pressed ls in his documents folder, and he saw that there was a text file called todo.txt. Now, if you type in cat todo.txt, it will just print out everything there is inside the file. It will just copy everything into one output and just print it out for you to read. It says here's something important for me to do later. So that is the idea there. And yeah, let's go back to seeing more things. Um, Again, there are multiple different things we can do. You can like basically whenever, for example, take a look on the right. If you wanted to go into a directory saying folder 1, we typed in cd space folder 1. Now when we type in folder 1, the system interprets it as slash home slash try hack me slash folder 1. Basically it is the same thing, but the thing is, the reason the system is interpreting that this folder 1 is exactly in home and try hack me is because we're already there. So you don't have to type in the whole address every time. You can just type in the name if you're already in the directory. If this folder 1 was somewhere else, if you were not in home try hack me but we were somewhere else altogether, then this folder 1 wouldn't be referenced directly. You can't directly just type in cd folder 1 and expect the computer to look up exactly this folder 1 and come in here. No, if you're in the directory that is containing folder 1, which is basically home try hack me, then you can just type in folder 1 and the computer would know you're referring to the folder 1 which is in that directory. So yeah, this and that are the same equivalent. If you want to access a file that is somewhere else, then you'll have to type in the full directory name, or basically cd yourself, change directory yourself into that directory and then type in the name. More or less this is the better option. You can type in the exact thing and there you go. It's the same thing, but by locality of reference the computer can understand in some cases when you're in the same directory. So let me just go back to our main directory and there we go. Now, we saw PWD, we saw the path and whatnot. Okay. On the Linux machine that you deploy, how many folders are there? Now, in this time, we've already done it twice. Whenever we press ls, there are one, two, three, four folders. There are 5 files in total, but there are 4 folders. And access.log, it's a log file. Now, we have to find out which directory contains a file. So let me just clear the screen once. Yeah, you can type in clear to clear the screen. That is also another thing you can remember. So ls, we see that there are 4 folders. Uh, Again, we'll try to cd into each folder. Let's go to folder 1 and ls. Is there anything? There is nothing. Let's back out of it. I hope you remember double dots means come up a step or back. Now, if you wanted to see what is there in folder 2, you can also remember that we can just ls directly the name. We don't have to go inside the folder. So let's try that now. ls for, oh, sorry, folder 2. There is nothing inside it. So it returned nothing. Now let's check ls folder 3. There is nothing inside this as well. Now let's check ls folder 4. ls by mean list. List whatever is there in folder 4. There is something called node.txt. We can't exactly access it directly. Let's move in there. cd folder 4. So we know that the folder 4 directory has a file in it. Let's type in folder 4 and there we go. Correct answer. Now we wanted to know what the contents of this file are. Now let me clear the screen. When you type in ls, there is a file called note.txt. Now, if you remember, the way we are going to find out what contents are there inside a file is by using cat. So we are essentially going to get it all to output into the terminal, get all of its contents by typing in cat note.txt. Now there is a string of text called hello world exclamatory mark. Let's just type that in. Hello world. And there we go. Correct answer. Now, basically, what we're going to do is we are in here, we're in the same directory. Now, we want to find out the full working directory, basically in folder 4. Now, if we just type in print working directory, we can see slash home slash tryhackme slash folder 4. So slash home slash tryhackme is where our terminal started, and in that, represented by a tilde, in that slash, we are in folder 4. So let's type in the whole thing: slash home slash tryhackme slash folder 4. There we go. And with that, we are done with task 5. Now let's move in, and let me just clear the screen there. Again, just type in clear and it'll clear all the previous history for you. Now we're going to be learning how to search for files. Now, more often than not, in most cases, we won't exactly know where a file is located. We won't exactly know what we're looking for, or we won't exactly know which position or which subdirectory our file is located. If it's in a Windows, or if it's in a graphical environment like in Mac OS or on any Linux front end, you could just click around, and or you could just use a search bar or whatnot. Now, in a terminal situation where you have to type in code, in that case we will have to look for files by typing in their names. Now, we also know cd and ls. We don't have to go into each directory. We don't have to cd change directory. We don't have to cd into each and every place and ls and find out exactly what files are there in there and see if we have the one we wanted. No, we don't need to do all that. We can just use a command called find. This automatically searches everything. This automates all of the cd and ls process, and it'll just return exactly the location you want it to be. So let me just back out. Oh, my bad. Let me just back out from folder 4 into the main. And yeah, we are in tilde, we are in home. To confirm, print working directory, home try hack me. There we go. This is exactly where we started. So fresh terminal. Now let's see. Now, again, with find, the thing is, there's a lot of flexibility. You can have it recursively search through directories. You can have it search for files with a specific extension. You can have it return a list of things, whatnot. So there's a lot of things we can cover in find. But for the time being, what we're going to be learning is the most elementary stuff, which is we're just learning how to use find for the most common things we'll need to be doing. Now, basically, sometimes we just have different like things we want to look for. Let's say we're looking for a file named password.txt. All you have to do is type in find, and you're specifying to find that the name of the file is passwords.txt. So you're calling on the find command here. You're saying find utility, and in that utility, pass this file. I'm looking for a certain file which is named passwords.txt. Now these arguments like name or extension or whatnot are specified by a hyphen. These things are called switches or flags. So yeah, I won't be using the word flags anymore, because in TryHackMe a lot of the answers themselves are called flags. So I'll be referring to them as switches. In find, we're using the name switch and we're going to passwords.txt. It will look through all of the directories that are below this tilde, that are within tryhackme, and find out if there is a file called passwords.txt. If you wanted to look into the whole PC, then you have to basically back out. Or there are some other switches to use to look for the file in the whole PC, like matching name, but we'll get into that later. So, yeah. But then when you use find, it will return you the directory, all right. It will return you exactly where that thing is located. Here we can see dot slash folder one slash passwords.txt. It will return you like the exact position in which a file called passwords.txt is located. But the thing is, in most cases, we won't exactly know the name of the file. We could be looking just for some text file. We don't exactly know which text file. We don't exactly remember what we named it, but we want to just know what all text files are there on the PC, and thereafter find exactly which text file we are looking for. Now to do this, my bad. Now to do this, we basically use a wildcard. Now a wildcard is represented by a star or an asterisk. um with a wildcard, basically you're saying that you don't know what is over there. You don't know exactly what that thing is. So here, like let's say you're looking only for text files. Again, you'll say find, you'll say in the name. You don't know what exactly the name is, but you want everything that ends with a .txt. So star, anything over here, but after the star, there should be a .txt at the end. So this way, it'll return every .txt file's location there is within that directory, across subdirectories, across many things and whatnot. So yeah, inside here there are two text files. Dot slash meaning that from the current position, folder one has passwords.txt and documents has to do.txt. There are two files with the ending with txt. So yeah, and now we come to grep. Now grep itself is a very 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 important utility. Now the thing is, grep can be used to, like, bend shape and like look through multiple outputs, like how we're using cat to read the contents of a file and display it to us. The same logic. What grep can do is it can, like, highlight specific sections. You can pass it arguments saying that inside the file, if there are so and so conditions that are matched, only then show us the output and whatnot. Now let's take a case study. There is, let's say earlier we saw that there was this something called access.log right there at the top right. I hope you can see access.log. Now this access.log, it could have n number of lines. It could be a very huge thing. For example, let me just cat access.log. Now look on the right. There's just so many entries. And if you're looking for something very specific, like a very specific output or some very specific condition or very specific piece of text in it, this could be impossible to look through. Like, you could lose track of lines. You'll have to be highlighting, you'll have to go through these many lines in the first place, whatnot. It's just such a big headache and it's such an inconvenience. So let me just clear the screen here. Let me just make it a little easier. So yeah, what grep can do is it can basically look for specific inputs for us. It'll automate it. Cat just prints out everything, it just spits out everything. Grep can basically do this. It can search entire contents of the file for any entries of the value that we are searching for. If we're looking for something specific, we pass it to grep and it looks through the file. Now let's take a case study here. We're looking at this file called access.log. They're looking for a specific IP addresses entries 81 143 211 90. So basically the command is grep what you're exactly looking for, that you put in inverted commas, access.log, which is the file name we have to look for. So basically you're telling grep find me every entry with this text in it, 81 143 211 90, inside the file access.log. And what does grep do? It immediately scans through all of these entries and finds out three entries with this exact IP, 81 143 211 90. There are three entries. It spits out all three of those lines. So what grep does is it returns you the full line. It just doesn't return you like what position the text is in or no. It just returns the exact full line in which this text was found. So that way you have some context as well. So yeah, now I think we're almost there to try this out on our own. Yeah, there we go. Now we are looking for a prefix of thm. So basically, in our access.log file that we saw earlier, is clear ls. There we go. We have an access.log file. We are looking for every entry with the prefix of thm, which starts with thm. So when we type that in, let's see what comes out. So our command, let me just clear so that it's very visible on the top right. Grep. We are looking for thm inside the file access.log, and we press enter and we see we have one entry that has been returned. Basically, get thm access lang n so and so, the whole line. We don't have to worry about the contents of it. We're basically looking for a flag. A flag, again, in TryHackMe's context, is basically a text proving that we have done the project or we have done the task. So here the flag would be THM and the flag's contents. So basically our flag is get THM angular brackets access angular brackets. So let's type that in, and there you go. If you want to take a look at the hint, there we go. This is exactly the command we were typing. Okay, let's just press complete because that is more of a context thing. Yeah, so let's move on to the next task. Let me just clear the screen for you on the top. Okay. Now we're also looking at using this terminal to, like, do some simple evaluations for us. Um, Sometimes you'll have to run multiple commands because let's say there is a certain file that you want to, like, find, and then let's say there's a text file. You found the text file. Normally, if you wanted to find out the contents of a text file, you would type in find the name, I mean find dash name and the text file name, and then you would type in, once that is returned, you would go to that directory by cding over there, by changing directory over there, and then you would type in cat. That way you'll see the output. But if you wanted to pass multiple commands, or if you wanted to use the output of one command into the other one, or if you wanted to, like, let the terminal do a run, like, be running in the background while you're doing something else, so you can use a few switches or operators inside shell. By shell, whenever someone says shell, they are basically referring to the terminal. So yeah, as an overview, at the time being, we'll see four operators. The first operator being ampersand. Let me just zoom in a little bit so that it is more clear. Yep. Now, ampersand. What does ampersand do? It allows you to run commands in the background of your terminal. Sometimes you need the terminal to be, like, running a certain script, or launching a certain server, or keeping a certain server active, so that you can use another shell and, like, do commands on top of it, do commands on it. So when you press end, whatever is happening, whatever is running right now, it keeps running in the background, and it gives you a input line again, so that you can type in whatever you wanted to run on top of it. Now, if we press in double ampersand, it allows us to combine multiple commands together in one line of our terminal. We'll see a specific use case for this. We will come there. And the angular bracket, basically the greater than symbol, is a redirector. Basically, think of this as a right arrow. You can take the output from a command. Let's say when you press cat password.txt, you get the output of the text file. You can pass that whole output and direct it elsewhere. You can direct it into a certain command, or you can just type in a file name, and you can pass everything that comes out in the output into a new file. Now, if you put in double right arrows, basically double angular brackets, it does the same thing, but instead of replacing the output, let's say if you basically the command, let's say if it's like ls, and you wanted to pass everything in access.log to a new file, basically we could type in something like um, cat access.log, and we take the whole output, as you can see at the top right, and move it to some other file, saying, let's say, new.txt. Now this file is not there. If that file is not there, it is created there. ls, and yeah, file called new.txt is created. Let's check if it has all of the outputs of access.log. So how do we do that? We do cat new.txt. There you go. It has everything. So yeah, you can pass outputs. But the thing is, let's say I created, wait, let me just make a new file. Let me just echo sample text to a file called new2.txt, right? Ls, there are two files now. Let me just read new2.txt. Don't worry about what I'm doing here. Basically, what I did is I echoed sample text, whatever is the output when you type in sample text, and I pass the whole output to new2.txt. So basically, a new file called new2.txt is created, and it has the contents sample text. Now, if you see, if the if we use a single right hand operator, it's a redirector. Basically, let's say if we wanted to move new2's contents, sample text contents, to new.txt, new2.txt, we move it to new.txt. But new2.txt is a command not found, so we basically do cat new2.txt. We read out the entire thing and pass it to new. Now, if we open new.txt, the whole log, the whole earlier thing we passed to it, the access.log, is gone. There's only sample text in it now. So if you're using a single right hand operator, it replaces everything inside the file, in the destination file, and just adds the contents of the thing we're passing. If you don't want it to replace, if you just wanted to add to the end, basically append to the end of the file, you would use double arrows. So now let's try to pass back the whole contents of this access log to new.txt without replacing sample text. To do that, we would use cat access.log. This way we get all the output of access.log, and we want to send it into new.txt without replacing sample text at the start. So basically, what we are expecting will happen is, after sample text, the whole access log is entered. So let's go ahead and press enter, and let's open new.txt. And the whole log has been passed, but let's go back all the way to the top and check if our sample text word is still there. Obviously we can't see here because the log is too big. Yeah, here we pressed cat new.txt, sample text, and thereafter the whole log file's content started. So yeah, so if you're using a single right arrow, everything gets replaced. Whatever you're passing is the only thing that will be there in the destination. If you're using a double right arrow, everything that is there is already there, and whatever new things you're passing to it get added to the end of it. Now let's take a look at ampersand and double ampersand. Basically, ampersand, again, you can have it run in the background and whatnot. Double ampersand is basically where we can run two commands together: command 1, double ampersand, command 2. But with double ampersand, this command 2 which is there, this will only run if command 1 is successful. If this command runs completely, then it is finished, and then this command is run. So yeah, it is basically cross dependent. If one fails, the other won't work. So we want, there are other ways to, like, make commands run parallelly without like stopping if there are errors. So yeah, we'll look at that as well. Again, let's go to the questions. If we wanted to run a command in the background, what operator would we want to use? We would want to use the ampersand. If I wanted to replace the contents of a file named passwords with the word password123, what would my command be? Now, again, so the first file is named passwords, and it has multiple contents to it. And you wanted to replace everything inside the file with the word password123. To replace, we use a single right arrow. Now, let's take a look at the hint echo. This is how we output the word password123, because this word itself is not inside any file. Like we saw earlier, if it's in another file, then we can just cat and we'll get all the output and then we can pass it. But here we echo it, whatever is the content that we need to pass, and then we use a single right arrow and we put the destination file name like we saw. So let's go ahead and do that. Echo password 123. We want to send it to passwords. There you go. Next, if I wanted to add tryhackme to this file named passwords, but also keep passwords 123. So again, we would echo tryhackme so that tryhackme output is selected, and we'd have to pass it to this file called passwords. But we don't want the password 123 to be deleted, in which case we wanted to add to the end of it. So for that, we're going to be using double angled right. So let me just go ahead and do that. Echo try hack me. We wanted to send it to passwords. We are using double right arrows. There you go. Now we've done all the practice. I'll just press complete and we're basically done with this task. Um, so yeah. Now basically we understand like how flexible the terminal is. With a few commands you can do a lot of things. Trust me, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The command line is so powerful, especially in Linux distributions, that you can do tons and tons of things with just a few keystrokes. You don't have to go around clicking, you don't have to go around opening multiple windows, you don't have to go around clicking on like policies and buttons and whatnot. The command line is very flexible, and a lot of people fear the command line. They think that the command line is very hard to grasp and like to remember all these commands. But once you get the habit of it, once you get the hang of it, once you're using it more and more often, basically once you like get a hang of what are the basic commands, what are the basic things you want to do and whatnot, the command line will feel way more comfortable than a GUI. By GUI I mean a graphical user interface, which is like the windows or these screens that we see, these tabs, Chrome tabs, whatnot, everything. So yeah, that is pretty much what we covered in this Linux Fundamentals 1 room. Next up, we have Linux Fundamentals series next. Before we go, again, it is a good practice to terminate these machines because we are not using them anymore. Why waste resources? So let me terminate the attack box first. And here, because the attack box and this are linked, automatically both of them are terminated. But normally we'd have to terminate both of them. So yeah, we terminated all the machines and join Linux Fundamentals Part 2, which is next in our path. We will go there and continue. We are done with the room. So yeah, that is pretty much it. And yeah, let's go back to paths. Let's just make sure that, yep. Next up, we have Linux Fundamentals 2. Then we have Linux Fundamentals 3. And we are nearing to about an hour of the stream. I think this is pretty much it. I think we can effectively end our progress today on this note. Let's only keep the streams to 1 hour so that they're more concise and you can look through it easily. Although I will make highlights and clips available. So yeah, that's it, guys. That's it for today. If you like the content that I'm making, if you find this interesting, or if you find this discussion well, please make sure to follow. Please make sure to voice your opinion in the comments and whatnot. I'd be really happy to read them. I'd be really happy to engage with them. And all in all, if you find this interesting, you can also go over to my YouTube channel, the link to which is on my Twitch page. And if you're watching on YouTube, hi YouTube, you can go to the description. I linked the Twitch channel. You can come by and we can you can like engage. You can do a lot of things and whatnot. So yeah, that is pretty much it. Thank you for coming. And the next stream, we will go ahead with Linux Fundamentals Part 2 and thereafter Linux Fundamentals Part 3.